Hollywood didn't try to replace Marilyn Monroe because she was successful. They tried to replace her because she was uncontrollable. When Marilyn became too powerful to manage, the studios didn't protect her. They panicked. So they copied the look, stripped the soul, and discarded the women who came next. This isn't a tribute, it's an autopsy. Hollywood is dead, and tonight we are talking about the copycat Marilyn Monroes. They didn't start with a woman. They started with a silhouette, and the first studio to pull the trigger was Fox. Jayne Mansfield was marketed as Marilyn, but louder, bigger breasts, dumber jokes, zero protection. When the novelty wore off, the industry laughed and walked away. Universal tried next. Mamie Van Doren was sex without a safety net. No long-term roles, no reinvention plan. When the culture shifted, she was left behind, blamed for her own erasure. Fox panicked harder. Sheree North wasn't just inspired by Marilyn, she was instructed to be her. Voice, walk, timing. It hollowed her out and stalled a career that never recovered. Even overseas, the machine kept grinding. Diana Dors was sold as England's Marilyn. Same sexual branding, same pressure, different accent, same damage. Here's the part Hollywood never admits. Marilyn wasn't replaceable. She was singular, and every failed copy proved it. Jayne Mansfield wasn't born a bombshell. She was Vera Jane Palmer from Pennsylvania, violin playing, straight A student, high IQ. Blonde was a decision. The voice was a decision. The curves engineered. She didn't accidentally become the next Marilyn. She studied Marilyn Monroe like a blueprint. The breathy baby talk, the shoulder tilt, the calculated stumble, and she pushed it further. Publicity stunts that bordered on cartoonish, wardrobe malfunctions that never seemed accidental, low necklines so aggressive they became headlines. There's a famous dinner party photo where she leans forward in a dress cut to oblivion while Sophia Loren side-eyes her like, "Are we serious right now?" That wasn't clumsy, that was strategy. But here's where it got ugly. She wasn't playing dumb, she was performing dumb. Behind the scenes, she was reading scripts, negotiating, trying to produce her own films, and getting punished for daring to be more than the punchline. The industry loved her as a spectacle. They did not love her as a woman with ambition. The joke stuck. The serious roles didn't. And when the curves weren't shocking anymore, when the novelty faded, she was left hustling nightclubs and talk shows to stay visible. Then 1967, she died in a car crash in Mississippi. She was only 34 years old. The girl who tried to out Marilyn never got the chance to outlive the myth. That's the crazy truth. Her fatal car crash is still treated like a tabloid circus. Decapitation rumors, gruesome photos, endless shock bait. Meanwhile, almost no one talks about her intelligence, her training, or how deliberately she built the persona that later destroyed her. The body became the story. The mind was erased. Again, Mamie Van Doren didn't pretend to be innocent. She leaned in, hard, discovered young, pushed fast, and dropped straight into the blonde bombshell lane with zero guardrails. She partied with the Rat Pack, dated like it was a competitive sport, marriages, affairs, drinking, pills, all of it out in the open, decades before anyone called it oversharing. Her autobiography doesn't soften a thing. She names names. She admits the chaos. She flat out says she used sex, shock, and visibility to stay relevant, because disappearing was worse. Unlike the others, she wasn't trying to be Marilyn Monroe. She was trying to survive the same trap without pretending it was art. The ugly truth? She saw exactly how disposable she was, and decided to cash the checks anyway. Messy, self-aware, still standing, and that's why her story makes people uncomfortable. Mamie Van Doren openly admitted she slept with powerful men because that was the only currency available to her. And then said the quiet part out loud. It didn't buy safety, loyalty, or longevity. It bought time. And time ran out fast once youth did. She didn't romanticize the Rat Pack years. She described them as reckless, alcoholic, ego-driven, and emotionally empty. Fun until it wasn't. Dangerous if you expected anything more. No nostalgia, no fairy tales, just aftermath. While others insisted the bombshell image was accidental, Mamie said it was calculated. Hair, walk, laugh, neckline, all intentional. What wasn't intentional was how quickly the industry turned on her once the shock stopped working. She saw the cliff early and walked away before it killed her, left Hollywood, raised her son, got sober, lived long enough to tell the truth without permission. She wasn't spared. She escaped, and that might be the most subversive ending of all. All right, next up is the quietest tragedy of all, and honestly one of the cruelest. Sheree North wasn't a caricature, a party girl, or a stunt. She was a trained dancer, a solid dramatic actress, and, this part matters, someone the industry genuinely believed could replace Marilyn Monroe if Monroe became too difficult. That belief is what ruined her. She wasn't encouraged to develop her own image. She was instructed to overwrite it. Executives coached her on how to walk into a room, how to pause before speaking, how to soften her voice, how to lean into the same vulnerable, sexy timing that made Marilyn magnetic. It wasn't inspiration, it was mimicry, drilled until it felt unnatural. Instead of being cast as Sheree North, she was constantly measured against a woman who was still alive, still working, and still impossible to replicate. What followed was a kind of slow psychological erosion. Critics stopped seeing her as an actress and started calling her another Marilyn. Roles flattened, opportunities narrowed, and the cruel irony is that when she tried to pull away from the comparison to do serious drama, television, stage work, the label stuck anyway. She was too Marilyn to escape it, but not Marilyn enough to be protected by it. Unlike the louder copycats, Sheree didn't implode publicly. She didn't crash cars or dominate gossip columns. She faded, and fading is often more damaging because it comes with silence. No scandal, no mythology, just a career that never becomes what it could have been. She worked steadily for years, but always under the shadow of a role she never asked to play. The real gut punch is this: she may have been the most capable of all of them, and she paid for that by being treated like a contingency plan instead of a person. Now we cross the Atlantic, and the story gets slicker, colder, and just as ruthless. Diana Dors wasn't an accident, and she wasn't misunderstood. She was engineered with precision, marketed as England's Marilyn, before audiences even had the chance to decide who she actually was. Platinum hair, hourglass figure, scandal-forward press. The difference? She knew exactly what was being done to her, and she played along because visibility meant leverage. She came up fast in Britain, where the industry was smaller, tighter, and even more class-obsessed. Her sexuality alone was treated like a provocation. Add ambition, and suddenly she was dangerous. The press painted her as vulgar, greedy, and out of control, not because she was worse than the men around her, but because she refused to act grateful for the attention. She leaned into notoriety, understanding that outrage traveled further than respect. Then came the money chaos, lavish spending, tax scandals, hustling to stay solvent while trying to maintain the image she was expected to uphold. She married badly, trusted the wrong people, and burned through fortunes faster than studios burned through actresses. By the time the novelty faded, she was already branded difficult, excessive, and morally suspect. All the usual labels when a woman stops being profitable. But here's the twist people miss. She survived by reinventing herself. She pivoted to television, comedy, reality appearances, even public self-parody, doing whatever kept her working. She didn't get dignity handed to her. She took endurance instead. Diana Dors didn't implode like a cautionary tale. She adapted. And in a business that loves to punish women for aging out of fantasy, that might be the most defiant move of all. Jayne Mansfield treated Marilyn like a volume knob. If sex appeal worked, she'd turn it all the way up. Where Marilyn Monroe used vulnerability and timing to disarm people, Jayne used excess to overwhelm them. Marilyn's appeal came from contradiction: sensual but wounded, playful but sad. Jayne flattened the complexity into spectacle, and while it bought attention fast, it burned out just as quickly. Marilyn frightened people because she couldn't be controlled. Jayne was dismissed because she appeared too easy to control. Mamie Van Doren never chased Marilyn's emotional depth. Where Marilyn wanted to be taken seriously as an actress, Mamie understood the role as transactional from the start. Marilyn believed talent might eventually outrun image. Mamie never made that mistake. She didn't expect salvation from the system, which is exactly why she survived it. Marilyn internalized the fantasy. Mamie used it and left before it finished the job. Sheree North was the closest thing to a real successor, and that's what doomed her. Unlike Marilyn, who built her own rhythm and fought for autonomy, Sheree was instructed to imitate someone else's. Marilyn's power came from being singular. Sheree was denied the chance to be. She wasn't rejected because she lacked talent. She was buried because comparison erased her identity before it could fully form. Diana Dors mirrored Marilyn's sexuality, but not her longing. Marilyn wanted legitimacy, respect, and intellectual recognition. Diana wanted control and survival. Marilyn pushed against the myth and paid for it psychologically. Diana leaned into notoriety and learned how to pivot when it turned on her. One woman broke under the weight of being misunderstood. The other endured by never expecting understanding in the first place. And that's the final truth this comparison exposes. Marilyn wasn't dangerous because she was sexy. She was dangerous because she wanted more and believed she deserved it. Every copy that followed proves just how expensive that belief was. What this pattern exposes about mid-century Hollywood is simple and ugly. The industry didn't know what to do with women who generated power faster than they could be contained. Sex appeal was acceptable, ambition was not. The moment a woman tried to renegotiate her value, creatively, financially, or intellectually, she was reframed as unstable, difficult, or replaceable. The blonde bombshell wasn't a role. It was a containment strategy. What's striking is how little room there was for evolution. These women weren't allowed to age, pivot, or deepen. They were expected to remain frozen in the moment that first sold tickets. When Marilyn pushed for control, the response wasn't compromise. It was duplication. Instead of fixing the system, they tried to outrun her humanity by manufacturing alternatives. The assembly line didn't exist because Marilyn failed. It existed because she succeeded too loudly.